MyMac Podcast 843. April Tools.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Mighty MyMac Podcast. Yes, there's a couple of tools on the end of this line, I can tell you. Well, there's no March event, and the crop of we don't actually know anything, but refuse to shut up about it websites and journalists seem to maybe have learned a lesson about announcing Apple events and are staying quiet. I'm sure this will be the way things are going forward, and we can expect thoughtful analysis of Apple news and events after they've happened and not before. April Fools.
It will never happen, ever.
No, you're right. So when's the April event?
I heard it's next week. Some analysts said it was next week.
What's been going on for you, Guy? This busy Mac week.
Yeah, well, Tracy's 27-inch iMac is still on the floor next to her desk where she's still using her MacBook Pro. However, on Thursday, I did go to see, along with Tracy and the two boys, Godzilla versus King Kong at the movie freaking theater.
You completely threw me then, because you said I went with Tracy and the two boys, Godzilla, and I thought I didn't.
Yeah, that's their names, Godzilla and King Kong.
Was it any good? Because I've heard it's not that good.
They were not so good when they were growing up, but they're much better now. Oh, you mean the movie? Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah. It was loud. We saw it at this place called Alamo Cinema and Draft House. So their setup was actually kind of cool how they work it out. They've got like the nice theater seats where you can kind of lounge back and relax a little bit. And it's got a little table. And the way that they've kind of worked it to try to help people with social distancing and all the rest of that, you can't just walk up to the theater and buy tickets. You have to do it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So you buy however many tickets it's going to be. You tell them what food it is that you want, because they have a pretty good menu. It's like what you would see at like a TGI Fridays or a Ruby Tuesdays or something like that. Which of course might not mean anything to people in the UK.
Yeah, TGIs.
Okay, so that kind of food. And it's not bad. You're eating it in the dark, so you have no idea how it's presented. But it was quite tasty. They had popcorn with like real clarified butter, not just the oil that most movie theaters put on. So anyway, you order your tickets and you order your food. And then when you show up at the theater, you sit down, and the two seats to either side of you, however many seats that you have, are kept empty. So people are at least like 4 to 6 feet away from you, to the right and to the left. And I believe they kind of did the same thing behind or in front of you, where they keep some seats open there as well. And so in a 500-seat theater, I'm guessing, they had maybe 150 people for this Godzilla versus King Kong, but it was so loud. They have this thing called the Big Show, and it's basically where they're like, we've got these big speakers, so why don't we just crank them all the way up? And that's what they did. And of course, if you've seen the recent Godzilla movies, it's all CGI now. It's not like, guys in rubber suits smashing through a miniature city. So the CGI was really good, and there was lots of destruction. And, Kong and Godzilla, they each kind of got their licks in at various parts of the movie. And then the very ending, of course, when what happened there was, kidding. I'm not going to say. If you're a fan at all of giant monsters destroying cities, go see this. It was really, really good. Peter has now seen it at least 3 times.
Blimey.
In the theater. Yeah. Oh, he's a huge Godzilla head.
You said something there which kind of tinged my inquisitiveness.
Okay.
Ordered food.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take that food into the cinema itself?
No, they bring it to you.
Okay. Yeah, but okay, let me rephrase my question. You eat that food in the cinema while the film's going on?
Yes.
What sort of food are we talking here?
Peter had a pizza.
Oh, God.
Guy had chicken fingers and fries. I had a steak and cheese
the one
and
thing
fries.
I can't.
And a peanut butter milkshake that was freaking delicious. And I'm not sure what Tracy got.
Most people in the UK now listening to this will be just shaking their head.
Why?
Well, the one thing I can't stand is people eating in the cinema.
Believe as loud as this was, somebody could be munching.
It's not. I just think it's disgusting. I just think it's disgusting.
Oh, okay, don't order the food.
Anyway,
or is it everybody else that's not supposed to be eating?
Yes. Okay, it's just me. I can. Yeah, I love you, Americans.
The other thing, and then, but speaking of food, Tracy took Guy Jr. back down to Richmond yesterday. So I got home from work and I was by myself, and I don't typically get to eat Little Caesars pizza. And for people here in the States, will probably know what that is, because Tracy doesn't like all the bread, and it's a relatively thick crust.
Yeah.
So they have this like $5 deal at lunchtime where you get like a square with 4 slices and something to drink. And I was really hungry, so I figured, well, I don't think that's going to be enough, so I'm going to order 2. So I did, and it was like $16. And I was like, that seems a little pricey for, 2 little pizzas. But it was like, how often do I do this? Okay, fine. No, Gaz. That was actually, each box had 2 of those 4-piece pizzas in it. So now I had 16 pieces of pizza that I brought home. And after you've already bought it, it's not like you can sit there and say, oh, I made a mistake, take this one back. Because that just makes you kind of a dick. So it's like, no, all right, I'll just take it home. And I sat down.
You can eat it the next day, be fine.
Well, normally, yes.
Yeah.
Normally. But I ate an entire one of those myself last night and paid for it that night, because I didn't go to bed until it was after 2:00 in the morning, because my stomach was just like, are you freaking kidding me? 8 pieces of pizza, pepperoni pizza? Are you dumb? Are you stupid? And of course, to that, I had to answer, yes. Yes, I am. And so we got up this morning, and right around lunchtime, Tracy was like, well, we put that pizza away, and I had 2 pieces of it. Why don't you have some more for lunch? And I was like, ugh. I don't want to see Little Caesars pizza for a long, long time. And it's not that it's bad pizza. It used to be awful. Now it's tolerable.
It's funny. My daughter makes a pizza, but she makes the dough as well, and it's quite a thin crust. But it's how pizzas I remember them, when they were really crusty and really quite hard to break through the pizza. So you normally have to pick it up because you can't just cut through it. And she does a really good dough, actually. So yeah.
Well, in the States, and I mean, you've been to the States. You've had pizza in the States before. It's usually even the thin crust pizzas are doughy.
Yeah.
You cut through them, and you don't like. I know when I was in England, or when I was in some of the other countries and had pizza, when I would see them cut it, you could hear the cutter
crunch.
Going through it. You'd hear that crunch. Yeah. In the US, the pizzas are kind of doughy, a little more doughy than that.
Undercooked, mate. Undercooked.
I don't know if it's undercooked, but it's certainly, especially like you get like a Chicago. Have you ever had a Chicago style pizza? Welcome to the Pizza Mac show, everyone.
Pizza Mac. What a Pizza Mac.
Pizza Mac. Have you ever had a Chicago style pizza?
I think I have. Yes.
I
think I have, because I seem to remember it's quite
like a pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the actual crust is like not real thick, but it goes across the bottom and it comes up the sides, and then you fill it with stuff.
Yeah.
And unlike most other places that you get pizza where they go sauce, cheese, toppings, in this case, it's usually toppings, cheese, sauce, and the sauce goes on top.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, Chicago style, I love Chicago style pizza, but you don't get it much here where I live. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about pizza, and I'm going to ask you, what have you been up to?
Well, I was going to ask you, is the next piece? I'll ask you the
Oh,
question. I'll ask you the
okay.
question after I've done my bit.
All right.
So I did just over a 37-mile plus bike ride, track and road again this week, and I had a 2,800 feet ascent included in that.
Wow.
I've got to admit, hands up here, one of the hills I did have to get off and walk because at that point my legs were going, yeah,
You plonker.
yeah, absolutely. So not a great deal done on MyMac. I'm starting to think actually about decorating our living room, which will be the last room to do in this house. The biggie part of that, though, will be the floor, which I intend to sand and varnish like I did in this room. So, yeah. Anyway, Guy, so not much on MyMac this week. So, what mic are you using today?
Okay, this week I am using the
This
Audio
week
Technica.
in Guy mic.
That's right. This week in Guy mic, I'm using the Audio Technica AT2050. It's a condenser microphone. It does require 48 volts phantom power and an audio interface or mixer to connect to your computer, and retails for about $230. This was not a cheap mic. Normally, this would not have been a microphone that I would have bought because I have some condenser microphones, but I much prefer dynamic ones. However, do you remember a couple years back, I went to Ohio to go to a warehouse sale?
Oh, yes, I do remember. I was going to say I don't.
For Audio Technica had this warehouse sale.
I do remember that.
And they don't do it anymore. But I remember when I went.
Because you bought all of their mics.
Yeah, well, not just me. I remember when I went, I was sitting there thinking, well, how many people could there be? And I got there and pulled into the parking lot. There was like 300-400 people standing outside waiting for them to open. And I was stunned. And, they had this thing where, early birds get some earplugs or something for free. Well, it's like, well, scratch that off the list because I'm so far down. I'm surprised there'll be much left when I finally get in there. But they had this microphone, the AT2050, normally sells for $230. I got it at this warehouse sale for under $100, and I couldn't turn it down. And originally, I thought that the one I was using last week, which is another Audio Technica, that's this one here. I thought this was a 2020, but no, it's a 3035, which they don't make anymore. So I don't actually have an AT2020, which is one of the standard condenser mics that a lot of podcasters use.
Well, this one sounds good.
And I have another one for next week. I'm going to have it go past real fast. Yeah, that was it right there. That's all you get to see.
So for those listening, obviously Guy put it across the video. So anybody watching might be able to guess if they're good at their mic.
Probably, yeah. They'd have to freeze it and let me see. Did it have? Yeah, you might be able to guess what it is if you freeze frame it and then spend a lot of time researching it. It would be really stupid.
Yeah, or they'll just wait and listen to
till next week. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Oh, right. Okay. Are you done on your mics?
Yeah. So this is the one I'm using this week.
Cool. I'm going to go over straight into Gaz's snippets.
And it's working. Yeah.
Kaboom. Former Apple store manager has been indicted in a 1.5 million COVID relief fraud case.
Wow.
Wow. That's
string that guy up. That's just.
Yeah, that's not good at all. Not happy with that one. Apple Maps start showing speed camera information in some additional countries like the Netherlands. What are those? What other countries does it show?
I haven't seen it here yet. I actually used Waze.
The cameras in Canada, Ireland, United Kingdom, United States, but it's coming to Netherlands and possibly other regions too. So that could be Belgium and the likes of Germany.
As long as they're allowed to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. iPhone shipments to Gulf countries saw double-digit growth in Q4 2020. Not really a surprise, I don't think, really. Apple TV Plus debuts The Year Earth Changed to herald Earth Day 2021.
How did it change?
Earth Day 2021, Apple TV Plus will debut the Year Earth Changed along with the new seasons of Tiny World and Earth at Night in Color. Let me think about that a bit.
So, let's see. What is that color again? Black.
Apple are encouraging employees to get COVID-19 vaccine with paid time off.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, well,
good idea.
Yeah. Apple's independent repair provider program has expanded globally. Now it's in more than 200 countries. So nearly every country where Apple products are sold.
Good. Excellent.
It's good, isn't it? Apple's independent... oh, no, I've just done that. Apple loses bid to stop Swatch using Jobs' One More Thing queue.
And, I actually read about this.
Go on,
the
then.
part that just blows my mind is the judge actually said, yeah, okay, we understand that Steve Jobs kind of made that a thing. He says, however, Apple never trademarked it. They didn't have the rights to it. So if some other company came in and said, you know what, we're going to take the rights to that. And, Apple doesn't have anyone but themselves to blame for that.
Yeah. And it's, I am getting a bit frustrated with being able to copyright something someone says.
Yeah.
It's the weird times we're living. It really is ridiculous. Epic files a UK antitrust complaint against Apple after losing the legal battle. So Epic Games has filed a UK antitrust complaint against Apple despite having lost a court case in the UK over the same issue, using the kind of hyperbolic language we've now come to expect.
What?
Epic's complaint accuses Apple of kneecapping the competition and exerting monopoly power.
Okay. Remind me again, Epic, how many people can sell stuff for Fortnite outside of your store? Can you remind me of that again? I'm just curious.
Just curious. Do you know, it's a little bit, it's becoming a little bit like the flat earthers, isn't it? This epic battle.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's now been going on for what, over a year?
Yeah. Yes.
How much money has Epic lost? Putting aside the whole 15% or even 30% that they were going to be charged.
They've kind of got into a position that, yeah, absolutely. But they've now kind of got themselves into a position where they can't even get an easy exit out, can they? They can't do a
they screwed
nice
themselves.
exit out. Yeah, completely. Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference is back on its in its online format. So we are going to have the Developers Conference in June, I believe, but it's going to be, as per last year, all online.
Yeah, well, this is not dissimilar to what Mike Potter decided to do with Macstock. Because there was no way to know.
But scale is a bit different.
Well, of course, but I mean, it's the same problem.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You have no idea what the state of the world is going to be in July, which is when Mike typically has Macstock. So he couldn't reserve the auditorium at the community college. He couldn't make deals with hotels, and it was like, just.
No, well, he's a much smaller. He's a bit of a smaller fish, so he can't. It's much easier for him to make that decision, which was the right decision, Mike.
It was completely the right decision, especially considering, if Apple had gone ahead and said, we're going to do a real WWDC this year with people coming in, and then at the last minute was like, oh, sorry, we can't. Here's everybody's money back. They can do that, right? A small operator or a small conference cannot.
Mimo Photos arrives on iPhone and iPad to print books, cards, calendars, wall art, and more. The reason I mentioned that, I've kind of used Mimo on the Mac, on MyMac, and I think it's quite good that it's coming to the phone. And people, you need to print your photos, folks. You need prosperity. The amount of times our kids come back and they want to have a look through some of the photos, and don't print all the arty farty ones unless you're going to put them up on the wall. Put the pictures with people in them.
Yeah, the ones that people want to see. Yeah, people don't want to sit there and say, well, that's the picture of me looking at the Mona Lisa, but I'm not in the shot. It's a picture of the Mona Lisa. For all I know, you got that off Instagram.
Yeah.
We don't know.
You can now use your iPhone
To take pictures of the Mona Lisa?
Or Apple Watch. Now get this. The reason I put this in was I thought, really? It's taken this long? You can now use iPhone or Apple Watch as a contactless ticket for entry into Disney parks.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. And it was kind of the same thing where it was kind of like, couldn't you already do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because Disney parks and Universal Studios.
Guy, back in 2015, was it? Yeah, I think it was 2015 when I came over for the first Macstock.
Mm-hmm.
Don McAllister put his watch, because the watches were out then. I think they'd just come out. And he used his watch to go through security on his thing when they check the tickets.
Oh, at Chicago?
No,
Heathrow.
No, in Manchester. That was we flew from Manchester. It was in Manchester. Yeah. Now that was 5 years ago, for heaven's sake. Anyway. For several months, it's been widely rumored that Apple Pay would launch in South Africa. Well, that day has now arrived.
So now I can go back to South Africa.
You can. There was a fake app that was approved by Apple's App Store, which stole a man's life savings in Bitcoin. Now, I don't like Bitcoin, and I think that people should be very careful when you are dealing with Bitcoin, and fake apps can appear anywhere.
Well, how did it do it?
Well, it said, I don't know how it did it, but obviously the post here is less interested in the fact that the man lost his Bitcoin and more interested in the fact that Apple say that their store is the safest in the world. Yet this fake app still got through, and that's really, they're not worried about the guy lost his savings in Bitcoin, which is really bad. It just includes it's They have got to be a bit careful though in saying stuff like this. They have got to watch out that they don't, create an air of complacency. Apple powers ahead in new renewable energy solutions with over 110 suppliers. So over 110 suppliers of Apple's manufacturing partners around the world are moving to 100% renewable energy for their Apple production. Doesn't mean they're doing it for anybody else, but they're doing it for their Apple production.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be the same thing. We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, when they were saying Apple's gone to all solar energy or whatever at their Cupertino facility, which is not really what happened. They built a solar array someplace, and it's putting power onto the grid, and that's charged against the power that the Cupertino place uses, which is fine. The more solar power and the more wind power and the more water power, or however you generate power that's not related to burning fossil fuels, is great.
Yeah, well, as long as they get it right, though, and they don't do this carbon offset stuff, because I've heard that I think I read somewhere, I heard someone talking about it, and they said the top companies that tell you that they are offsetting their carbon by having trees grown elsewhere on the planet. The top, I think it was 3 or 4 companies. If they were to actually offset that by growing all of these trees, planting all these trees, an area the size of Spain would have to have been covered with trees. Now, that's the top 3 or 4 companies that are using this. It's a joke. So let's not trick ourselves that we're doing something good. Let's get it right.
I do know that my sister Maurice's uncle said that there seemed to be trees growing in the middle of his living room. So
it could be right then. Could be right.
Maybe.
Apple was upgraded to a buy rating by analysts at UBS and given a $142 price. It's been a little while since we've heard some Apple hit its new high of whatever. So they're starting to move up again. So things are perhaps getting back to air quotes normal. Apple's first, get this, guy. Get this. Apple's first 13-inch MacBook Pro with a Retina display, or Retina, however you want me to say it, has now has now retina.
Yeah,
You say
that's what I always
retina, I say retina.
And people look at me and go, no, that's not right.
No. Well, that's now been classified as obsolete, Guy.
Well, I was born in 1960, so I don't even want to think about what Apple would classify me as.
Nor do I. Apple TV Plus expands creative team with the hire of veteran entertainment exec. Let me just see if I can find his name.
That
Zenon Clifton. He's now the creative executive.
Is that Zenon with a Z?
Yes.
Okay.
Not Senin. Senin Cove in Cornwall. Zed, very good, yes.
Always bring it around.
Now, apparently, I've seen an image of Apple's B519 remote for Apple TV, designed in cooperation with cable companies. This remote looks very similar to that remote that I talked to you about that I got from the company in Switzerland.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. Actually, I bought two thinking I was going to have one upstairs and one downstairs for the two Apple TVs.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use either one of them.
Don't you? We use ours all the time.
It didn't sync in quite the way I thought it was going to.
Oh, right.
And because I don't control the volume through the TV set, that part of it didn't work. And it was like a whole thing. I don't want to get into it because
okay, well we certainly use ours. The only thing it hasn't got on it is the Siri bit, which is a bit of a pain, but we do use it, to be honest with you. Apple is adding 2 new American and English voices for Siri.
Is one of them Silly Podcaster? Because they haven't contacted me. They really should have.
But
you don't want to watch that. Watch Invincible instead, and then just switches right over to some other program.
Apple to buy over $50 million worth of batteries from Tesla for a new energy storage project. Apparently, this project is in California, and Tesla is going to supply a mega pack battery system for the project. We'll see.
Don't they have enough problems getting enough batteries for their cars?
I'm not saying anything.
Talking about Tesla, not Apple.
So I saw a fact that they can't work out why Tesla's share price is so high. And I saw a fact which kind of threw me a little bit the other day. Was it Volkswagen or GM? I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Volkswagen. They sold about 20,000 more EV vehicles than Tesla in the last 12-month period, whatever it was. Yet Tesla's share price was 641 million, and Volkswagen's was something like somewhere between 150 and 200 million.
Well, Volkswagen's got their own problems.
Well, yeah, but I don't think it makes up that difference, Guy, because Volkswagen also sell lots of other cars.
Yeah,
just crazy. So there's a lot of faux pas about Tesla out there, I've got to say. Apple knowingly, Guy, Apple knowingly sold 2016-17 MacBook Pro models with FlexGate display defect.
Shh. I'm sorry. What did you just say?
I'll say that again. Apple knowingly sold 2016-2017 MacBook Pro models with FlexGate with the display defect. Defect. Like it. Says a judge. 2019.
I'm going to have to go through this one very carefully, I think. Yeah, I don't know. What do they base that on? Is there like some corresponding evidence from emails or whatever?
U.S. District Judge Edward Davila,
I hate him already,
determined that the consumer's allegations of Apple conducting intensive pre-release testing, which the consumers say was conducted by a team of reliability engineers who carried out stress tests and other procedures that would have alerted Apple to defects behind the display failures, sufficiently demonstrate that Apple was aware of the alleged defect. Now, I'm a bit confused by that because it says of the alleged defect. Anyway, the court finds that the allegations of pre-release testing in combination with the allegations of substantial customer complaints are sufficient to show that Apple had exclusive knowledge of the alleged defect, the judge wrote in his opinion. We'll see where that goes. This, I think I put this one in because it just made me laugh. Eve Aqua HomeKit connected water control gains thread support via a firmware update. So there is a Eva Aqua tap, one of these things where you can control your water outside. It just gets a firmware update, and now it can have HomeKit support, which is good because I know that Apple have been pushing out, rather than having to have the hardware of a certain level, you can actually create, as long as I think the hardware still has to be of a certain what's the word I'm looking for, sufficiency, let's put it that way, but they can now actually update and have a firmware update which gives them the HomeKit support, which I think is good.
I thought when you said thread, it was like how it got screwed onto something. It was like, how do you fix that in like a software update? Go ahead. That was a joke. Not much of one.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the next story, really.
It's like, I'm not listening to Guy anymore.
Apple supplier TSMC are to invest $100 billion over 3 years to meet chip demand. I like chips. Contract chip maker and major fish. Apple supplier TSMC said on Thursday it plans to invest $100 billion over the next 3 years to increase the manufacturing capability. Yay!
Because they know as soon as, especially once the higher performing M series chips start coming out, I think right now, Apple is in a position to possibly, over the course of like the next 5 years, if Intel doesn't get their act together.
Well, that's why they're doing it.
To double.
TSMC just started laughing when they saw that, that ad come out from Intel, and they said, right, we best start investing because Apple aren't going to be using Intel now for their chip.
Yeah, they looked around and said, is Justin Long available?
Yeah. Tim Cook invokes a Steve Jobs in a company-wide memo celebrating Apple's 45th anniversary. 45 years.
Yeah,
Incredible.
1976. Actually, it was April 1st. I don't know if you knew this, guys. April
I did
1st,
know this.
1976 is when Apple incorporated.
Yep. I did know that. Urban myth.
Turned out the entire company was a big joke all these years.
Tim Cook in a memo to employees, there has never been a moment of such great potential as this one. Now, if that's not just a Tim Cook memo to employees, that's a Tim Cook to the analysts as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Apple hiring cardiologist with clinical product development experience for its health team. Not surprised at that at all.
Nope.
Apple are now rejecting app updates that defy the iOS 14.5 app tracking transparency rules.
Was that defect or
defuct?
I guess I asked for that one. Okay.
You did.
I did. I really did.
You did. Fantasian, by the creator of Final Fantasy, is now available on Apple Arcade. More in a minute. Apple stores in France are closing voluntary for the third national lockdown. So they're having another lockdown in France, unfortunately. So Apple stores are closing there again. So don't come over here, France, please. We don't want another lockdown here. I think we couldn't take it.
You guys haven't gotten out of the last one you had. You're still on lockdown, aren't you?
We're just coming out of lockdown, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Carl will like this, actually. Apple Arcade gets massive guy expansion with 30 new games, including a hit iOS classics and more. So I'm kind of now sitting waiting for my TV subscription free trial to run out, and then I'll start paying for the Apple One, and then I might be able to get back into Apple Arcade, because I wasn't going to pay $5.99 for it. As part of the deal, when it becomes a bit cheaper, yeah, I'll do it. But
and that game Among Us And, thank you, Epic, for making Among Us one of the most popular iOS games ever since Fortnite is no longer available on iOS. Good job. That's now available to play on your Mac, including because with the beta for it's 11.3 beta 6, I think it is.
Right.
For iOS games that you play on your Mac, you can now choose a control scheme for that game.
Have you tried it?
I did try it with Among Us, but I didn't have anyone to play with, so I'm not sure how well it was going to work anyway. But Apple says that's what it does, so we'll see.
Right. Okay, cool. Corrupt iOS profiles preventing developers from downloading the latest beta. That happened last week. However, it has now, of course, been fixed. And finally, Apple adds a new SVP of hardware engineering, John Turnus, to leadership site. So Apple today, earlier in the week, updated its dedicated leadership website to add a profile for John Turnus that reflecting his new role as Apple's senior vice president of hardware engineering. I don't know who he is.
John, you don't know John?
No, you know John? I know Johnny.
He's a great guy.
I know Johnny, but I don't know John.
No, this John Furness. Yeah, he's great.
Turnus.
Oh, Turnus. No.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you're thinking of someone else, aren't you?
I'm totally thinking of someone else. I'm sorry.
And that's the end of Gazzy's snippets. I do have a Gazzy's link though.
Oh, good.
Two, in fact. Volkswagen. My title here is When an April Fool Isn't, or Is It a Joke? Well, no one thought it was funny because, it wasn't after they'd botched it.
Pretty much.
Mind you, I'm used to this company telling porky pies. Well, to me, that's how I feel about their emissions deception that cost me £800 in injectors on my Volkswagen Jetta. And I've said this, I will never ever buy a Volt or Volkswagen ever again. And yes, that includes Seat, that includes Audis, yes, that includes a whole load of cars, but
BMW too.
No, it's not BMW. They're different.
Oh, company. I thought that they were
it's
part
different.
of that.
No,
okay,
different. Anyway, they did make
General Motors.
I think it would have been a good April Fool, actually, if they'd gone through with it on the right day. But it got leaked. Got leaked, guy. I wonder. Now, I also looked at a website which was looking at Apple's worst products. And I'm just going to go through these very, very quickly because I might have a question for you coming up actually in a little bit.
Okay.
And some of the things that they came up with was an Apple USB hockey puck mouse.
Terrible mouse.
The Siri remote, Mobile Me, the iPod Hi-Fi, the butterfly keyboard, Apple Maps launch, the AirPods Max smart case, the Mac Pro, iPod socks, the iPod Shuffle 3rd Gen. So there was a few things there, but that actually, I'm going to ask you a question in the next section about that. Now,
okay.
Before I go, and that's the end of my links. That's the end of that. But before I go, I had a request from Mr. Apter, and he said to me, I really do like you, Gary. You're a really nice fella, and I could have a drink with you in the pub any day of the week. But when you'd send me an email saying, could I give him all of the identifications of accents from all of the people in Ted Lasso, and then he gives me a list of the names, I went, they're all London, Gary. Okay,
yeah.
apart from a few, and you need to tell me who you want specifically, but basically all London. So Gary,
it's
Gary
like my
does,
accent. I have a London accent.
You do.
You can hear it.
Do. I can hear it. But Gary does enjoy actually listening to some British comedies, and he does often ask me a question about accents. So just for Gary, here we go. All right. South London, innit? Right. Okay. Would you like to take us out, Guy?
I will take us out. Everyone stand by to stand by.
That's like
And we'll be
Australian.
right back. I don't even know what the hell that was. And welcome back to the second part of the MyMac.com podcast. And to get a little setup here for what we're going to do in this part of the show. Now, normally, Gaz, we would have like some serious discussion, or there'd be some news or some new Apple thingy that we would be talking about. But that's not what we're doing this week. This week, Gaz has a few questions for me. I do not know what those questions are. Now he's assured me that they're serious questions. So we're gonna find out how badly I can screw them up. So Gaz, ask your questions. Go ahead.
Well, Guy, the police came to my house the other night and started asking me some questions about what you were doing on the night of... No.
I was going to say, I don't think I can provide you an alibi there.
Okay, so Guy, when did you buy, or when did you get, or when did you start using your first Mac?
My own first Mac, or somebody else, or my first experience with Apple
your
products?
First experience with a Macintosh in particular.
Okay, I don't quite know how to answer that, because, and
that's not a surprise.
I know. my brother-in-law, Arthur, had a Lisa. He had one of the 2 disk drive Lisas, which was my real first experience with a GUI-based Apple product. Now, I had seen an Apple II in the early 80s, but I hadn't used one for myself. But that Lisa was the first time that I actually sat down at an Apple computer with a mouse and a keyboard and used it. Now, my very own
Okay, so before we
Macintosh
get
computer.
onto your own Macintosh, what did you think? Can you remember that experience? What it was like?
I was stunned at just how great it was, and I remember using what was it, Apple Word, or whatever their word processor was at the time.
I couldn't tell you what it was. So
okay, and now remember, he didn't have a hard drive in this. I'm going to admit something here, but only because he's passed on and probably won't come after me. This computer had 2 floppy disk drives, 400K floppy disk drives.
Yeah.
And all the programs,
those?
All the programs that you would load onto this computer, because it didn't have a hard drive, you had to do through these floppies. All the files that you saved had to be saved on these floppies. So my niece Raquel and I were playing on the computer, and we had this Word program in, and somehow either she or me, and take your bets, managed to erase the program disks that had this word processor on it. And it was not cheap.
Did you say this?
Wait, hold on. I screwed up.
I did not. I don't think I ever admitted it to him that it could have been me that screwed it up. I think it was more along the lines of one of those, I don't know, I made it up as I go along. One of those kinds of things. I don't know. But my very first, and that was in 1985 when I saw that one.
Okay.
The very first Macintosh computer that I owned, I purchased in 1987, and it was a Mac Plus that cost me, I think the computer was $1,200.
That was a lot of money then.
Oh yeah, in 1987, a huge amount of money. And then I got a hard drive, SCSI hard drive. If you remember SCSI, I got a SCSI hard drive external.
That was a pain. SCSI was a pain.
Oh yeah, and trying to keep the chain right, and you could only go 7 devices in, something like that.
Wow.
It was a 40 meg hard drive, 40 meg hard drive, $700.
For the hard drive?
For the hard drive, yeah.
And
so
I
remember
almost $2,000.
Yeah, for a 9-inch screened black and white Macintosh Plus and 40 megabytes of external storage. And I remember at the time sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'll never fill this up. And now you can't even get an MP3, which is a compressed audio file that has less than 40 megabytes on it. I also got an upgrade.
So what did you do with that then? Why did you get a computer? Why
for the most part, I was just kind of interested in figuring out how all this stuff worked. Originally, one of the things I was going to use it for was to catalog the comic book collection that I had. And I actually got some like shareware software to do this kind of thing, where you put in the comic book title and the issue and the artist and the writer and, all this information. And then I looked at, like, at the time, 10 boxes with at least 300 books in each one of those boxes. And it was like, yeah, you remember that project I was going to do?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
I
do love those sorts of projects, because everyone, unless you start at the beginning, forget it. Absolutely, forget it.
You'll never do it.
You'll never do it.
Well, nowadays there's this scanner that you can buy, and you basically scan the barcode, and it fills in all the information for you.
Yeah, which is still easier, but it's still a pain. It's still a pain.
Well, and by the time that scanner came out, I had like over 40 boxes, so it wasn't going to happen regardless. When I sold, actually, real quick as I can, I recently got rid of that entire collection. I had over 50 boxes of long boxes. Comic book collectors know what that is. 50 long boxes of comics that probably cost me $50,000 in total over the course of many, many years. And I sold the entire collection for about $1,500. Mostly because, number one, we wanted the space back here in the house, because it was taking up a huge amount of space in the house. But the other thing is, and this is a life lesson for anybody, and I'm being very serious here. Just because you have something that someone tells you is worth a lot of money, it's only worth as much as someone is willing to pay you for it.
Absolutely. That
person that says, "Oh, that's worth $1,000." Ask them, "Oh, you want this for $1,000? I'll give it to you right now." Watch how quickly they run out of the room.
Absolutely. Okay, carrying on from that then. So, did you think that you were part of a cult when you were not a cult, but a cult when you got your first Mac?
Cult.
Well, yes, I know that as well. But did you think you were part
Hail
of the
Satan? I'm kidding. Oh my God.
Yeah, you might have to cut that out.
See, I had to bring it around to comedy somehow. That was a joke. Wink.
So did you think you was part of the Apple cult when you got this? Were you aware that there was was there an Apple cult back then?
Not in the late 80s. Apple was actually quite popular then, because you have to remember what the competition was like. You're talking Windows 1 and Windows 2 and even Windows 3.1, which is all DOS based.
Yeah.
For the most part, people were using those computers, but at work. They weren't home. Most people didn't have a computer at home because, frankly, Windows computers back then or DOS computers back then were just a royal pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So you would learn if you had a computer at home, you learned how to do like certain things for the most part. And I'm not talking about the uber geeks. I'm talking about the average Joe Blogs in the street. You would bring home this computer and you would do certain things, and then that was it. You didn't sit there and say, well, if I got this other program, I could do this and this. No, it was mostly games and stuff.
So trying to keep them on track here. See what I did there.
Good luck.
Okay, good luck with that, yeah. So when did you think the cult appeared? Was it later on in the 90s? Was it in the early 2000s? Do you think that's when the cult of Apple suddenly appeared?
I think that kind of started up mid-90s after Windows 95 came out. There was like this huge, Windows 95 for Microsoft was like the wave that broke on the beach. That was when people were like, oh, I can use this. And all the people that talked about how Windows 95 was a copy of the Mac OS. I've never, to the best of my knowledge, I've never really bought into that. I thought for the most part that Apple was just ahead of the curve, that this was the path that computing was going to take, whether it was the Mac OS or Windows 95 and all of the ones that came after that.
That in itself has a bit of an indication that obviously the cult became a cult because a lot of people had that thought and wanted Apple to continue because they thought they were on a better trajectory moving forward.
Well, that was a lot of it right there. As Windows became more popular and more people were buying Windows computer than Apple computers, especially as Apple's just started putting out such garbage computers. It was a really hard time to be an Apple Mac user in those days because the other side was right. Windows 95 was a huge leap forward, and it was so much easier to use than what came before it. And while it wasn't as good, it was good enough.
Yeah.
So to stay in the Apple camp and to defend the Apple camp, especially in the early days of the internet and the I almost said BB Edit, like the boards and stuff that people would go to discuss things, or even once AOL kind of became quotes the internet, you go into chat rooms and all you hear, oh, I'm a Mac user. Oh, you guys are a cult. Blah 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 blah. And it wasn't so much that I felt like I was in a cult. It was just like, why do you care?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you care what computer I'm using versus what computer that you have? I don't care, and I've never cared.
Now,
so that's what it was more annoying than having a grain of truth, in my opinion.
Now, a lot of Apple followers are still cultish, as it were, and they still have a really quite a big core following. Do you think newbies coming into the Apple ecosphere are being drawn into that cult ecosphere as well? Do you think it still applies? Obviously, it's not going to be the vast majority because there's an awful lot of people using Apple products that wouldn't care whatever the product was. It's to them, it's just a phone or something else. But do you think they get drawn in and become a little bit, still part of that Apple cultish ecosphere that happens?
I think what's happened is because of some missteps from Microsoft and from PC makers, that at some point it became obvious that the Mac OS was a superior operating system. And whether it was because of security or whether it was just because of the UI or what have you, frankly, to me, the UI argument doesn't really hold much water. Because
not anymore.
Windows, no, especially once Windows 7 came out. Windows 7 was a fantastic operating system, so easy, and it really closed the gap between OS 10 and the people that use Windows. However, because Apple's equipment is so much more expensive than, say, Android or Windows or pick your product of choice, I think some people feel obligated to defend having spent more money than other options that are out there. And that seems to be more along the lines of why they would be so fervent in their defense of Apple as compared to, well, it's a better operating system because of security, or it's a better operating system because of audio production, or whatever their reasons were, and which it was never going to be games, as to why they went to Apple versus why did they go to some other company or some other operating system. I mean, you've got all these Linux distros that are out there right now, and there's nothing wrong. The only problem with Linux is the lack of consistency, not just between the different distributions, but also within the same distribution, depending on where you get it from. So people who don't want to spend all of their time configuring a computer, maintaining a computer, doing all of these things, they're not going to go. They're not going to go to Linux. They're going to go to Windows, or they're going to go to the Mac OS.
Yeah, I tried Linux before I went from Microsoft to Apple, and it was just too much like hard work. Far too much like hard
and
work.
it's like this is supposed to be fun, and if you have to spend more time configuring and maintaining a computer than what you want to use that computer for, well, that's a fail.
Yeah. Talking about fails,
God,
so smooth this is.
I know.
Do you think that Apple has overcome the movie industry trip that they had when they changed Final Cut Pro some time back, or do you think that the M1 will bring back the industry to Apple, or do you think that actually there are other products which have taken over from the software side, but Apple will still be the choice of hardware within the industry?
That's a good question. When Apple went from Final Cut Studio version 7 to the original version of Final Cut 10 or Final Cut X, however you want to describe it, it was broken. There was a lot of things that just didn't work or that weren't available yet as compared to Final Cut Studio. And there was a big backlash over that. So people were like, well, you know what? I can go to Adobe Audition until they went friggin' subscription, or I can go to there's so many, there's a lot of really good video editors out there. Yep. Currently I'm using DaVinci's, what is it? DaVinci's
Resolve.
Yeah, Resolve. Fantastic. And it's free. Now, can it do all of the things that Final Cut or Adobe Premiere can do? No, not for the free version. There's a lot of power that's built into the free version of DaVinci that if you are truly, and I am not, if you're truly a video professional, you probably already have the pro version of DaVinci, because there's so much great hardware out there built by was it Product Red or some of these other companies that just fit right into the wheelhouse of what DaVinci Resolve, the pro version, can do. But for regular people like me to be able to have a good video editor and to have something like Motion, which I think they call Fusion, and to have built-in audio tools and compositing and coloring and like all of this stuff that you pay extra for when you go the Apple route. It's great.
So I think that Final Cut trip that they did has actually helped with a lot of other software products out there. But I think there was a bit of scaremongering about Apple losing their way, certainly with the hardware. But as I said, what do you think about the M1? Do you think that's going to bring a lot of the industry back when they start bringing out more MacBooks and more pro machines, like, well, possibly not iMacs, but maybe iMacs, but definitely Mac Pros as well?
I think that for a lot of people, Final Cut Pro has now become a product that they aspire to, because here's the thing. A free product does not instill confidence in a client. You tell a client, well, I'm using DaVinci Resolve because it's free. And why don't you go ahead and let me edit your, $100,000 project or whatever the
but
cost
you wouldn't
of that
do
was.
that with the free version, would you?
No, you would have, and a lot of times people in the know would say, well, what editor are you using? You say, well, I'm using Premiere Pro from CC version, whatever, or I'm using Final Cut, or I'm using DaVinci Resolve Pro, whatever they call their pro version. And depending upon the preferences of the person that you're doing these projects for, they'll determine who it is that they're going to hire, a lot of times based on the software that you use. With something like the high-class movie studios typically, because I mean, you also have to remember that what they use Premiere Pro for and what they use Final Cut Pro for is not usually the end result. They typically have like much higher versions of whatever, their editing software is for them to do their Final Cut. But what they use Final Cut for and what they use Premiere Pro for and what they use some of these other ones for is for the dailies. When they sit there and say, well, I want this and I want this and I don't need that and I don't need that, and kind of piece it together. But then the final result isn't going to come out of Final Cut. It's not going to come out of Premiere Pro.
Okay, so we've tripped back onto software a little bit. Do you think that there was a trip with this process on
you
the
asked me a completely different question, and I just kind of
yeah. Well, you just circled back to the software, but I kind of threw that in there. But that's fine. Do you think the trip that software had and the concern about hardware, do you think they're over that with hardware? Do you think that ever happened with the movie industry? Because Apple was the choice of computing
for a long time
within the movie industry, and there was lots of concern that was disappearing. Do you think that actually happened, or maybe it didn't?
Oh, it definitely happened.
Okay, Jude. So do you think the M1 is going to bring them back, and is that why you think they've actually been working also on the M1 to get them back into that area?
I think Apple's move to the M1 was a brilliant strategy. If there's one thing, and I know this may or not be actually answering the question that you asked, but
no surprise
there. Apple has always been kind of a control freak when it comes to their hardware. They want to own and control the entire widget.
Yep.
So the fact that starting back 10 years before they announced the M1, they started buying a lot of brain power for building chips. It shouldn't have surprised anyone that they were going to do this. And the really weird thing is, for longtime listeners of the MyMac podcast, you and I were talking about this 5 or 6 years ago. And then when the rumors started coming out that they were actually going to do it, all of a sudden I was like, oh no, they'll never do that. They're going to stick with Intel. And when they finally did it, it was like, God, stick to your guns. What kind of idiot will talk about something like that for years and then say, no, they won't do that.
I like the way you got it back to me, but well done. That's us
is what.
Yeah.
I think that the evolution of the M series processors is not only going to revolutionize what Apple is doing for their computers. I think it's going to revolutionize the industry, not completely unlike what happened with the cell phone industry with the iPhone. Sometimes an idea comes along and you sit there and you say, well, that's a stupid idea. Why would anybody do that? We have this perfectly great working thing now. And then somebody says, but what if we did this instead?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's one thing to sit there and talk about it in the abstract, to sit there and say, well, we have this idea. And it's a completely different thing when somebody has a finished product and says, here it is. And they hand it to you and you look at it, and, anyone who tries to compare this product to, say, a Nokia 650, you're full of crap. Okay. It's the original iPhone.
I'm going to move this because we're going tangentially and I don't want to carry it down that avenue. Well,
the M series processor is going to change the computer industry.
Yeah.
And we're going to have
I'm not worried about the
many
computer
more
industry
computers like that.
But off the back of that, do you think then the film industry will go, yeah, okay, we left you for a bit, but actually you're still the best. We'll start buying your hardware again. And I think your answer is yes.
Yes. Dependent upon, because they've already shown that Final Cut running natively on an M series processor just screams. And even software, for example, DaVinci Resolve, that was not native. It was working through emulation.
Which it is now, though.
Scream. Yeah, it's native now, but it wasn't when it first came out. It still was a screamer.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and in the film industry, time is money. So if you have a better product that's going to save a lot of time, they're gonna switch to that, because it's not just what's going on right now. It's what's going on a year, 5 years from now.
Okay, I'm going to move you on. I'm going to move you on, because time is, as you mentioned, money. Flipping it back to your family and you, are your family and your friends who use Apple products as obsessive about security? And are they, and do they use, and are they used to using the likes of password managers? Or do you get lots of questions about that?
I get lots of questions about that. And I don't want to say who it is. My wife just won't go to a password manager. My wife has this system of having, and she uses all different types of passwords. And of course, I'm not talking about my wife, but somebody completely different
to your wife
than my wife. Right. And so she has her system for maintaining passwords, and I have mine. So all of my passwords I manage digitally, because I want 14 to 24 character passwords with ridiculous types of.
So excluding your wife and other.
Who's talking about my wife?
Nobody. I can't think why your wife came up in conversation. Other friends and families that you know are Mac users, I'm assuming that you certainly don't find them as obsessive about the security as we are.
No.
Or am I wrong?
No, you're completely right. They are not obsessive at all. If anything, their lack of clarity disturbs me greatly. And a lot of times it's like you're doing what? What? Really? Why are you doing that? It's so much easier. Just give all your passwords to iCloud.
Yeah.
And it'll just pre-populate when you do it in Safari. Why are you doing this? But yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
They're
brilliant.
not.
Right.
They're not.
So now to you, I'm going to ask you a direct question. 2 questions reverse. This is going to be the first one reverts to the item that I brought up earlier in my links, and that is, what do you think is Apple's, and this could be going way back, is Apple's worst product?
Absolute worst product. Wow. If I had to put it on a particular product, it wouldn't be a product. It would be a line of products, multiple lines of products. The Performa, Centris, and what was the high-end line? I can't remember what the high-end line was called. The computers that they were putting out from like 94 to 97 were just awful. And a lot of times, they really screwed over, Apple management did, a lot of the third parties that were the only companies that were still selling Mac computers, because they weren't in retail stores, by insisting on quotas for how many computers that they had to sell. And a lot of times they would come out with a new computer, and the only difference between this computer and the one they had before was a number change and bundled software. So, but now the problem was somebody would have a Performa 576, and then the 577 comes out and it's got some different software, but it's exact same computer, with just different software. But now the third-party retailers can't sell the 576 because people want the 577. And it doesn't matter when you tell them, well, it's the same computer. They don't care. They want the newer one. Okay. So those 3 lines of computers, which also led to some brilliant designs from the clone makers, and I'm not going to go down that route, but it was the clone makers that kind of spurred Apple and Steve Jobs, because he came back to the company right around this same time, to ditch that entire strategy of the Performa, Centris, Quadra. That was it. The Performa, Centris, and Quadra lines of computers, and to simplify the types of computers they were coming out with. And it was the right move to make,
So
even though all the clone makers had to go away.
So interestingly, their worst product, and this often happens actually, led them to some much better products ultimately.
Yeah, it could have led to the entire company being crap canned. I almost said a bad word there. Because this was over the course of a couple of years.
Well, let's not dwell on that. Let's not dwell on that bit, because we could come back to that another time. So reversing it then, what do you think Apple's best product is?
Of all time?
Yeah, I'm going to give you,
I would say the best product Apple came out with that saved the company was the original iMac.
This is in your view. It doesn't have to be because it did something for Apple, but this is
the original iMacs were a brilliant concept, brilliant design, brilliantly done, and oddly enough had more to do with Gil Amelio than it did Steve Jobs. It was pretty much finalized before Steve Jobs came back, and he was the one that kind of rolled it out. But the concept of an all-in-one computer with, a 14-inch screen, well, I think that was the size of the original iMac screens, putting aside, of course, the completely horrible hockey puck mouse. But to sit there and have the entire thing in a box, not take up a lot of room. You don't have, okay, well, here's your monitor and here's your computer and here's this and here's that and here's that, here's this. It was all just like you take it out of the box, you set it down, you plug in power, you plug in USB, you plug in an Ethernet cable, and you're done. Everything is pre-configured for you. Everything is set up for you. And you turn it on, you tell them who you are, and you're off to the races. And it was not only did it save the company, it probably sort of jump-started the internet, because most people were having to use, connect up a modem and figure out handshaking for the modem and the internet and all the rest of that going through telephone lines. And it was like, oh, this is a terrible idea. And the iMac took a lot of the mystique away. The iMac took the heart away and made it easy.
Excellent. Okay, so I've got one last question here.
Okay.
If you could choose only one product to own from this point moving forward, what would it be? One Apple product. And it's funny because I thought about this and I thought, oh, well, it's easy. You'd say this, he says, holding up his hand. But actually, when you think about it longer term, if it's the only product you could have, so think carefully on this one.
My iPad Pro. My iPad Pro, while it's not a Mac, and it will, in its current state, it'll never be a Mac. However, I can make it do everything that I use my Mac for. I can record audio, I can edit video, I can play games, I can get my mail, I can surf the web, I can do all of these things from a device that I can hold in my hand and put into a small little carry-on bag and take wherever I go, with fantastic battery life. And because I have cellular connectivity, I don't need any other thing to go with it to get me online.
You could have, it wasn't what you have at the moment. You could choose one product, but it was only one product. So, but I think that's a fair choice. Fair. So it would be an iPad Pro with cellular connectivity.
Yes.
Good choice. And that's my questions. Those are my questions, Guy. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope the listeners found out a little bit. And we might, revisit some of those subjects again in future episodes.
But and for people listening to this show, if you also have a podcast, what you really should do is try to get Gaz and me on to talk about our history together and how long we've been doing this show, because I got to tell you, this is not unlike a marriage, except the difference is you and I don't spend that much time together, because at least not together. We've met one time in person, and yet somehow we have gone over 10 years in delivering this podcast, and this was a very different podcast prior to you and me taking it over.
It was.
I'm not saying it was better or worse or anything else that, but it was very, very different.
Every podcast better than the next one.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm nodding my head.
Oh, damn you. Oh, how could you do this to me? I should have had all this. See, now I can't find.
Hit it.
Oh, my. Oh.
Tips.
Mostly.
Gaz's tips.
Mostly.
Gaz's tips.
It's time for
Gaz's tips.
Oh, dear. No, you do that at the end.
Oh, that's at the end. Sorry. That's what I get.
That's the end of the Gaz.
Yeah.
Okay. Guy, Command Shift 5. Right, Command Shift 5 or utilities. Go into your utilities in your applications folder, and you open up the screenshot app. Now, okay, so why am I telling you this? Everybody knows about the screenshots that you can do. Well, there's a slight difference, because when you go into Command Shift 5 or into that screenshot app, it gives you one or two different options, and the option that I'm in particularly interested in, if I'm honest, is the option menu, which then gives you the capability to save those screenshots to a particular location. You can save them to your desktop or to your documents or to QuickTime or Clipboard. So you can save a screenshot straight to Clipboard, and then you can paste it anywhere you want, or you can save it to Mail. And as soon as you've taken that screenshot, it opens up Mail with that screenshot in the body of the mail that you can send out. You can send it to Messages, Preview, or you can dictate the location where you want that screenshot to be saved. You've also got a timer on there. Why have you got a timer on there? To delay the screenshot by 5 or 10 seconds. Well, sometimes you want to be able to take a screenshot of the menu drop down as well. So what you can do is set up the menu drop down. It delays the picture by 5 seconds, and then it takes the screenshot with that menu drop down that you've got. There are a few other options in there, but Command Shift 5 brings up all of the different types of screenshot that you can do, but it also gives you those other options. So Command Shift 5, or go into utilities in your app folder and open up the screenshot app, and you'll come up with a little menu at the bottom of your screen, and you can find all of those lovely options available to you there. Cracking app, and that's why we are Mac geeks and cults. Cults are us.
Cults are us. I'm agreeing.
Hit it. That's the end of Gaz's tips. That's the end of Gaz's tips. That's the end of Gaz's tips.
Is that the end of the tip?
Will you let me finish?
Brilliant.
Gaz, you are absolutely right.
There we go.
Yeah. This time.
This time. Yeah. We kind of followed along. I really enjoyed that, Gaz.
Good.
This whole section.
I'm good. I'm glad you did.
No, but and the crazy thing is, and it's my own fault, I'm kind of looked at as a clown because of how I act online. And it's not often that people actually ask me serious questions.
I had to think long and hard about that,
Yeah. But whether to ask me serious questions or whether I would answer serious questions.
No, whether I should ask you serious questions.
Oh. No, I'm okay with it. I'm good with it.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Now,
right.
If you enjoyed all of those questions, then you should go on over to iTunes or the podcatcher of your choice and do a review for the show. And if you do, I will do something that is not only serious, it is super serious. And that is, I will send you a Woo T. That is big W, big O, big O, big T, little I, little E. That spells Woody. And if you don't know what one is, do a review and you'll find out. If you would like to help support what I do and make sure I have all of the microphones I need to continue to use different ones every single week, though I'm close to that now, you would go to Patreon, patreon.com/MacParrot. You would go to Coffee, ko-fi/MacParrot, or you would go to PayPal to pay a pal and go to paypal.me/MacParrot. If you do any of those things, I would really, really appreciate it. Gaz, if people wanted to get a hold of you and say, good job keeping that guy serious, how would they do it?
Send an email to Gaz, G-A-Z, at mymac.com, or on the Twitters, twitter.com/Gazmaz, G-A-Z-M-A-Z, or you can contact both Guy and Gaz on the Twitters, twitter.com/Guy and Gaz, G-U-Y-A-N-D-G-A-Z.
Of course.
Well done. You can also send an email to feedback, F-W-E-D-B-A-C-K, at mymac.com. So, Guy.
Yeah.
Now.
No fooling.
No fooling.
His name was Guy.
That's you. Okay. I believe you're still being paid.
Guy was paid at 75 grand.
Yes, I think he was.
No.
I like to go with Guy.
I like to go with Guy because...
Pay no attention to that guy behind the curtain.
No, never.
They just
never.
don't.
Why don't you do that?
He's the guy.
Because, yes, absolutely. Now...
Guy.
What about him?
You remember Guy?
Yes, I do.
Guy says...
How do you get...
An email from Guy.
Oh, that's not a rhetorical question. You're actually asking me. You would get an email from Guy by going to the email client of your choice, typing in Guy at mymac.com in the sender field. No, in the recipient field. Because otherwise it would just go right back to yourself. And you would send that to Guy at mymac.com for an email. You could contact me on the Twitters. I have 2 Twitter accounts, Gaz. One is my longtime Macparrot. And not as long, but it's getting up there in years. I can't drink yet, but someday. Vert Shark over there on Twitters. You can, let's see. There's the vertshark.com website. You can see all the audios and videos if you go on over to YouTube and just look for the what do they call that? It's where I put like all of my stuff. Subscribe to Vert Shark over there on the YouTubes. You'll see all that stuff. All of that stuff indeed. And Gaz, we also have a Skype telephone number. I know how crazy does that sound to actually have a real honest to God phone number these days. That number is 1 or +1 outside of the United States. Area code 703-436-9501. That number again is 703-436-9501. And if you just despise for whatever reason hitting 1 or +1, then you're really going to be disappointed because there was a 1 in the phone number as well. And that would just be 703-436-9501 direct through the Skype application. And this is the part of the show where I say, thank you. Thank you to every single one of you. We really appreciate the fact that you have taken the time to either watch or listen, most likely listen, because I don't think we get that many views on YouTube, especially when I forget to hit the record button like I did last week. Yeah,
I'm hesitant because my volume has gone way down, and
you sound fine.
Okay, cool. Well, you still, yeah. I hope you still sound fine. But I've
well, I'm looking at you in Hindenburg. And,
okay, cool. That's cool. Okay.
So, but those are all the various ways you can get a hold of us. We really appreciate the fact that you have taken the time to see us or listen to us. And Gaz, once again, even though every show is better than the next, I still think after 10 plus years that we are good enough. I think that we're smart enough, and that if you asked Wilf, he would agree. Woof, woof, woof. People like us.
Manhanga, chupio, pizza, vida, burps, e farts, chi, devenu,
Didn't see that.
essay, tenuti, in controlu, montre, fatinu, podcast. I think that was pretty accurate, actually. Guy,
Yeah.
I've just lost 20% of my couch.
Oh, no.
Ouch.
Took me a minute.
And
So you can all go home and there's nothing to worry about. Get out of here now. Go on. Go on home and I go home.